everyone, and thank you so much for joining us in this, our announcement of a new and exciting phase in UJ's history as we begin a UJ online press. This is an exciting moment at UJ, and it's also a mark of the extremely positive environment that we have at UJ and the future that we see for our university and our country. As I've been talking to many other editors of different presses and managers of presses, people have sometimes been a little bit surprised that we are thinking of launching a press. But we feel at UJ that now is the right moment to embrace this change. And as we have been disruptors in a variety of other areas, I think UJ is going to become something of a disruptor in the environment of academic and university presses. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Professor Tselitsi Mawala, who will be giving our first address. And Professor Mawala is very much the champion of the UJ press. He has been driving this idea for many months and has brought us to the moment where we can announce that we are going to be having a press at UJ. As you all know, Professor Mawala is the author of over 14 books on artificial intelligence. And he has been our visionary leader who has really boldly led UJ into the fourth industrial revolution. And as so many of you know, this has had an enormous impact during our COVID experience. What many of you may know, but some of you may not know, is that Professor Mawala is an avid reader. And he really reads everything from classics like Plato's Republic to the most cutting-edge books on self-help and leadership and management. In his reading group, he has taken us through books on the Fourth Industrial Revolution, classical books from Africa, current novels from Africa, and he is about to take us on a journey of some classical works looking at A Tale of Two Cities in his next reading group. And so Professor Mawala really understands the importance of reading, the exchange of ideas, expanding our knowledge base and understanding of the world. And with this has been a champion of the UJ press. And so we are delighted to hand over to you, Professor Mawala, to explain something of your vision for this press and where we are going in the upcoming months and years. So over to you, Professor Mawala.
Thank you very much, Maria. I also would like to acknowledge the presence of Sorab, our Deputy Vice Chancellor for Research and Internationalization. And I also would like to thank all of you for joining us today. Indicative of our new normal, where digital gatherings such as these are increasingly becoming commonplace and the shift to online formats take hold, we are launching an online press that will publish journals and monographs and books. A survey of the top universities in the world will confirm that a university press is central. We are, of course, a training ground for new knowledge, for leading in the field in terms of knowledge development, and for triggering and embracing innovation and contributing to meaningful positive change in society. With today's launch, we join the likes of Oxford, Cambridge, and Harvard. The world of publishing is a resource strapped, and a university must fulfill its scholarly mandate by ensuring that it is a revolving door of intellect. A study found that 9 or 17% of the 52 African university presses had their own website. It is my hope that today marks a subversion of this trend. As Swiss publishing consultant Hans Zwell once said about African university presses, and I quote, "While the university press is a non-commercial enterprise, it must be run with strictly commercial and business-like efficiency, and that by evidence of the many dormant university presses, they are frequently low profile and visibility, and their meager publishing output is not always the case." Close quote. When I joined the University of Johannesburg, I was struck that neither of the major partner institutions had a press. As I took the helm as Vice Chancellor and Principal of the University of Johannesburg, it seemed a logical sequence for making the vision of an online press a reality. One of the projects that I initiated at JAS was the publishing of African biographies written by African writers, but particularly as calls for the decolonization of knowledge reverberated through the halls of our learning institutions. It is imperative that we create our own sources of knowledge with global stature, but with academic integrity. This press will provide an avenue and open new windows and vistas. While some might have traditional model of a press in their mind, the fourth industrial revolution allows one to publish work of a scholarly standard and of repute, providing wider access to knowledge beyond the physical walls of a university. In the past, to establish a press, even going back to a decade, would have required machines, typesetting, selection of paper, editors, sub-editors, and proofreaders. The advent of new technologies changes the resourcing requirements, but makes it an exciting world to venture into. Our online offering will be interactive with hyperlinks to related literature and other resources that speak to the depth of topics covered. This is certainly something to boast about, and it is my great hope that UJ continues to champion the publishing industry while advancing the 4IR and creating new epistemological spaces. I leave you with the words of Ugandan academic Mahmoud Mamdani, who once said, and I quote, "The starting point of any critique of neoliberalism in higher education is the recognition that a university is not a business, but a place of scholarly pursuit. Its objective is to maximize scholarship, not profits. Of course, no one can afford to be blind to financial realities. Universities are no exception, but if promoting scholarship is our core mission, we must be prepared to subordinate all other considerations, including financial ones, to the pursuit of scholarship. To forget this is to lose our way." Close quote. I thank you. Kia livua, niabonga, thank you.
Professor Mawala, thank you very much for those encouraging words and also inspiring words, and words that really give us some sense of the direction of this university press. What I think is going to be so exciting is the hyperlinks and the interactive nature of the press that we envisage. Everything will be online, and that is going to open whole new vistas of ways in which to publish information and to make information accessible and to broaden how we interact with the information that we are reading. To give us more insight into this, it is my great pleasure to welcome Professor Sarab Sinha, who is our Deputy Vice Chancellor of Research and Internationalization. Those of you that are part of this conversation all know Prof. Sinha's varying different achievements. But what I'd like to draw your attention to in this little introduction is how he has really helped us reimagine research in the fourth industrial revolution. He has helped us to think practically about how we change research and also what research we do. How do we research the fourth industrial revolution, not just from an engineering perspective, but as people living in this revolution as it takes place? And part of this fourth industrial revolution is the online and virtual world that we are experiencing at the moment. Professor Sinha will now speak to us about an overview of an online press and the exciting opportunities that this holds for us. So, Prof. Sinha, over to you.
Thanks very much, Maria, and much appreciation to the Vice Chancellor who provided the visionary leadership for the UJ University Press. Given the advent of the fourth industrial revolution and our own strategic contextualization, you would have expected an online approach. In June 2020, I took the request of the Vice Chancellor to the library and the Executive Director, Professor Frahm-Arp, who co-created this conceptual framework. Incidentally, at the time, she was also working on the idea of a university press, so in a way, the stars aligned. Because of the commercial component of a book press, the finance team led by the CFO, Mrs. Mamorare, who will speak next, became an instant partner to the vision. I must say that during the same meeting, I instantly received an email from her saying that let us see how we can work together. I suspect she will clarify next, though, that she was worried about the finances. The convergence of the library research and finance team has enabled the launch today. I will provide an overview of the university press, provide a retrospective or a historical view, and then an approach that leaps us into the fourth industrial revolution. It is also of interest that the university press of UJ comes about during the COVID-19 period. It is a period which has demonstrated to us and the world that when humanity is challenged, we have the ability to embrace empathy, care, and similarly innovate. Innovation is one prominent feature of adaptation. We are adapting to both the challenges and opportunities of the COVID-19 period. Now, on this slide, I decided to reflect in history. The oldest university press is the Cambridge University Press, or CUP. It was founded in 1534. In its history, it was granted a letters patent to print all manner of books. The phrasing could also reflect the aspect of academic freedom and plurality of knowledge epistemologies. Similar to this university press once upon a time, others have emerged and the approach has continued around the world. In the traditional form, with changes in the uptake of print media, the financial sustainability of a university book press in general has been a challenge. Disruptive online players have also emerged. Even so, the oldest university press has remained because of their brand, commitment to well-established scholarly review process, and also as they have evolved. For example, around 2010, CUP took the approach of an online Cambridge Books press, or Cambridge Books Online. Interestingly, Oxford University Press, or OUP, emerged in 1586. It received a decree from the Star Chamber and started to publish books. OUP's website does demonstrate that its first book, however, emerged in 1478. When I looked at this, I wondered if there was some kind of competition between Cambridge and Oxford on who started this first. I won't say too much because I recognize that the VC has a Cambridge background. But the publishers, like other businesses, expanded their approach internationally, and OUP started its work in South Africa in 1915. The first university press in South Africa emerged around 1922. A side note, as university press emerged, there were also others that did not succeed. And this is due to the contestation of the traditional versus online approach, and the aspect of financial viability remains critical. I'll next broadly talk about the digital economy. As you know, that we are moving into the fourth industrial revolution, and if you compare this with the third industrial revolution. And if this is all data that we have, then the third industrial revolution has given us access to perhaps, let's say, 25% of the data. We know that there's a lot more data that we all have with us, but it is data that we're not always able to use. And the fourth industrial revolution gives us that possibility to harvest the data that we have yet to use. And that is through algorithms such as algorithms of deep learning, which we will also talk about briefly. Now, of course, the VC released together with the Presidential Commission's report on the fourth industrial revolution was actually released not by the VC. The VC was a main contributor as deputy chair of that commission, but it was a contribution that was made through the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies, and that report was released by the minister on Friday. The VC also tweeted with the latest edition of the short and long reports, and this initiative is in one way an example of what fits into the recommendations that was brought forward by that commission. So why an online bookstore? The obvious one is that online books benefit from the internet and distribute swiftly. This distribution brings about inclusiveness, but digital books can also bring about other access features for persons who are differently abled. The trend, like on our continent with a greater youth population, online books are attractive to Gen Z, and audiobook interface for some may be immersive as in comparison to the hard copy alternative. But if you do not agree with that, there is also the option to print on demand a book, the latter allowing for traditional access at an additional cost. And for those of us who may find the traditional mode of reading a preference, to some, the hard copy is an escape, like through fiction, from the theater of the day. Aside from the online print, the other aspect is that manuscript tracking the peer review process, and particularly that the peer review of the complete book is a requirement for subsidy for those authors who may be within higher education in South Africa. The online approach enables this and also automates to a large degree business continuity in case specialist or another editor has to take unplanned leave. I must in advance express gratitude to volunteer approach for peer review. Peer review occurs with input of academics around the world, and they often do this at no cost. But at times, books, given their length, we also provide a small honorarium for this peer review. Now, there are two models of publication that is possible: to enable online access, where the reader pays, or open access, where the author or a sponsor pays. There is always a cost. At times, there's confusion that online means free. The last point, which I'm going to elaborate on in a bit more detail, is the aspect of deep learning. This is not to be confused with learning in more depth, but this is an algorithm technology of the fourth industrial revolution. Now, as I have expressed, that the ways that we access information continues to evolve. And one example is the hard copy approach, or ebooks. Another thing that has come about with ebooks is that a lot of books are stored on databases or as an ontology. And an ontology is a set of concepts and categories in a subject area with interrelations which are also captured in a database. But look at this. This is an interesting example, and with permission of the Vice Chancellor, we worked out on an avatar. And I'm just going to play it just a bit, just to give you an illustrative example of what are the possibilities that emerge.
My naam is Chalitsi Barawala. Ek is die visie-kanselier en hoof van die...
So you can see that the avatar can speak multiple languages. Translations are automated. And by the way, don't be concerned if the translations are not accurate at this stage. All it means that in future, as more data is captured, that data will improve the translation. And of course, avatars can be personalized. They can, with Vision AI, which is a tool of Google, they can incorporate emotions. and avatars can, with learning, also start to interact. Which takes me to the next aspect, which is that at the moment, when you read, you derive an input from a book. You, of course, think in your own mind based on the inputs that you've derived. But perhaps as the fourth industrial revolution progresses, perhaps to the fifth industrial revolution, one starts to realize that even through these interactions that your book will evolve, and these arrows that you see, which is one way, has the potential to go the other way into providing input into the database. Incidentally, about 10 years ago, we worked on a paper on a voice chat bot. Now you can see that with video feed, this whole area and arena has completely evolved. Now, a lot of what we wish to do, we can't do it alone. We're interested in partnering with other established publishers. The library has already initiated this approach. We're also interested in an approach that enables the university's ambition to be a Pan-African epicenter of critical inquiry, of critical intellectual inquiry. Our approach has to be embedded within social media. In other words, persons who are already present on social media can seamlessly interact with publication process and access. As we are in fact doing with the Zoom platform, this is also being broadcast on Facebook. As I've illustrated, COVID-19 period calls for the need for continuous adaptation. We see that those who have adapted, particularly through digital technologies, we are setting a new trend. We see, for example, our own interaction on the Zoom platform today. It remains essential that the board, which would need to be independent also for the research output subsidy process, and to have this, will need to have a composition that normalizes innovation in the space of university press. With these words, whether you are an author, a reviewer, or a sponsor, a colleague, or others, you are a vital part of our journey. We look forward to collaborating with you and towards making the UJ Press a success. We've seen examples of what Oxford has once initiated, and I hope that our journey in a number of years, perhaps even in some centuries, will continue to reflect the success and the evolutions and represent the exemplary evolutions that comes about with university press. Thank you.
Many thanks, Professor Sinha. We move over now to hear a few words from our Chief Financial Officer, Mrs. Nolwazi Mamarare. Ms. Mamarare is highly regarded in the financial industry, particularly for the leadership that she has shown in leading UJ finances at the University of Johannesburg. And she has won several industry awards to this effect. We are particularly fortunate at the University of Johannesburg to be in such good hands, particularly at this difficult time in the financial landscape of our country. Ms. Mamarare is going to speak to us today on the implications of financing a press in the university context, and what are some of the ideas that she has in how we are going to finance this and make the press financially viable. So Ms. Mamarare, over to you, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Maria, for that very generous introduction. Professor Marwala, Professor Sinha, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It's a great honor for me to be part of this momentous occasion. And I'm very excited and looking forward to seeing this initiative of establishing our own UJ Press grow and prosper. I think, as Professor Sinha has indicated, university presses are no longer the same as they used to be in the past. While they remain critically important to support the strategies of universities, they certainly are not high income generating businesses. Consequently, from the inception of this idea, and particularly under the current economic conditions, we had to critically consider the cost and the benefits of establishing the UJ Press. This included us benchmarking with other institutions within and outside the university sector to ensure that as we go forward, we attain maximum value from our investment. The establishment of the UJ Press will not only contribute towards growing the stature of our university, it will also play a significant role in growing our publication subsidies. We're very grateful to Professor Sena and Professor Frahm-Arp, who have committed to ensure that as we launch the UJ Press, its activities will be supported with the capacity that already exists within the UJ Library. However, we will ensure that this does not happen at the cost and compromise of the good work that the UJ Library provides to our students and staff. Of course, there will be additional costs, and there's a particularly costs around the production of the publications, and most importantly, the publicity and marketing of the UJ Press, because it is important that we ensure that the utilization of the press is at its maximum to remain financially viable. So as there will be these additional costs, I have also been assured that this will be kept as minimal as possible while we also ensure the success of the project. To this end, minimal seed capital has been provided and approved for these additional costs. We will, however, accordingly continuously monitor both the monetary and the non-monetary return from this investment to ensure that it remains a viable project. So colleagues, I look forward to working with all of you in ensuring the success of the UJ Press. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mamarare. We are going to open the floor up to questions. So if you do have any questions to any of the speakers, please post them on the chat and I will address the speakers once I've given a quick overview of what you can expect from the UJ Press. So as our speakers have said, our UJ Press is going to be publishing journals and monographs. We already have an online journal publishing platform, and we already publish 5 different journals. This is going to be expanded now under the UJ Press to be a facility that anybody can use, and we can host journals that are edited by people outside of UJ. So up till now, our online journal our online journal system has been for people who are editors of journals and where those editors or members of the editorial team are part of the UJ staff. This will now change, and anybody who has a journal or any journal that would like to be on this platform will be able to do so. The online journal platform is one of the cutting edge platforms in that it provides you with extraordinary administrative support. Many of you are aware of how journals work and are aware of many of the online systems that are out there. And we have done our homework and found that the online journal system is the most effective system for this back-end administrative support. For our monographs, we will also have an online system, and we will be accepting monographs, and all our monographs will be peer-reviewed. The focus of the press is going to be around the decolonization of knowledge and Africa's engagement with the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Put it differently, we are going to have a Pan-African focus. And within this Pan-African focus, we are keen to publish as much as we can on the Fourth Industrial Revolution, its impact, how it is being played out, and how countries are able, and in some cases, not able to embrace this revolution. What we are very excited about is the fourth industrial revolution aspect of the press. In other words, using these technologies to create a more interactive press. So if you are going to read a monograph published by us, it will have a variety of hyperlinks to other articles, to more details about the authors. But we are hoping that there will also be hyperlinks to a virtual reality tour or some form of augmented reality. What do I mean by this? One of the dreams here is to help authors create a very short virtual reality tour of their ideas, something that will inspire people to read the book. We also want to link it to existing virtual reality tours. So for example, if you are publishing something to do with tourism in South Africa, we will link you not just to other written material, but also other interactive material around tourism in South Africa. We have many ideas about repackaging ideas, i.e. summarizing ideas in ways that make them very accessible and really stand out to readers. And this links to one of the key focuses of this press, which is going to be marketing, but looking particularly at social media marketing of our journals and monographs. And so with this, we are wanting to come up with a variety of different ways of marketing the material. And one of these will be to try and encourage people that if they don't want the entire monograph to be open access, make a chapter of the monograph open access. In other words, create ways to make your work visible out there. A second aspect of this press is going to be the peer review process. Not only are we going to ensure that obviously the peer review process is adhered to, but we are also going to be driving the idea of using blockchain to verify the peer review process so that it will be completely transparent. An essential part of what makes things like Oxford University Press so successful is the excellence in editing and the excellence in helping authors write the very best monograph they can. And this is going to be a third area that we are going to focus on. How to work closely with our authors to not only provide language editing, but also editing in how you present your ideas. How do you create those various hyperlinks? And how do you ensure that your monograph is of the best possible academic standard? We are going to encourage people to make their work open access where possible, but this is not an open access only press. It is going to be a hybrid where people can have a reader pays model, an open access model, or a hybrid version if that is what they would prefer. There will also be an opportunity to print on demand. In all of this, our cutting edge difference that we see is going to be around the marketing of this press, and in that, using deep learning. So having artificial intelligence as part of the back end of our system, we will be able to make the work that is put on our press more visible to people throughout the world. In all of this, we are going to try and help our UJ staff to publish works of the best possible quality and support the broader publication of academic and scholarly work in Africa. We look forward to this very exciting journey that we are going to start in earnest next year and have already begun in the library with our online journal system. We are open to all sorts of suggestions that people might have and are keen to learn from the University of Johannesburg's broader community and scholars, and for anybody to bring their ideas to us and help us make the very best press we possibly can. So that's the end of my overview, and we now are open for questions. And if anybody has any questions to any of the speakers, please put your questions in the chat, or for those of you that are online, you could unmute your mic and ask a question. But please raise your hands so that I can see who has a question. Right, our first question is, when is it useful to publish something as a working paper? Professor Sarup Sinha, I wonder if I could ask you to answer that question. When is it useful to publish something as a working paper?
Thanks very much. And that's an interesting question because the dynamic in how we publish has changed. Today we have blogs, we have vlogs, and we don't always have, you know, the avenue of being able to get peer review while a document is developing. Of course, we do have the options of a crowd-based peer process, which is something that on that a post-print review and available peer review value. So those of when more material available is that if you want to have input during the development process. Just maybe one related thing is that in some disciplines, conferences serve the purpose of a working paper. Many times when you publish at a conference, you are actually producing a work in progress so that you can obtain inputs from people. And that's one of the reasons why the Department of Higher Education and Training in the South African context gives half a unit of recognition. But when the work is mature and it's ready and it's a new input into the knowledge body, then it finds its way as a journal, or in some cases as a book or a monograph. And in that case, you're looking at a full unit or a more than a unit. And so I think that's maybe another area of difference and another avenue in which a working paper is availed. Thanks.
Many thanks, Professor Sinha. I have another question that's come up, and I think, Professor Mawala, this question would be for you. The question is, what impact will a press have on the UJ rankings?
What impact would the press have on rankings? I don't think there's a direct. I don't think there is a direct impact. Obviously, if we are going to have many books that are published through our press, then it is going to contribute to our stature. And some rankings, and many of them, look at the perception or the quantification of the stature of a university. And the more you are out there, the more that stature actually increases. So I think that is the contribution. I will also ask Saurabh to add.
Vice Chancellor, I think you have really covered the aspect of academic reputation. I think that's really would be the pillar where this contribution has been. Of course, for us, doing excellence is what has mattered, and ranking is just a it is something that we have derived a benefit from, as for example in the QS ranking, the university is the only university in the country that has continued to find a positive gradient. And so I think that the knowledge contribution that it will bring, and also as a platform of interaction and engaging with the international world, that bilateral and multilateral platform contribution will also add to the knowledge product and to the citation aspect, which is another angle for a ranking instrument.
Thank you both for those answers. We then have another question, which in some ways is a little bit provocative. The person asks, if this is going to be a 4IR platform and online, are we thinking of publishing in areas that are more than books? I think perhaps they mean publishing on other platforms, perhaps videos and things like that. I wonder, Professor Sinha, if we can start with you and then perhaps Professor Mawala.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, because once upon a time, when you look at OUP and you look at CUP, they were printing, because printing was a mode of archiving. And we have that today. Books are available, and it is one of the oldest book presses. Now, I think what is happening and is challenging in the 4IR domain is we actually have a real way of being able to archive videos. You talked about blogs, now you talk about vlogs. And so this mode continues to develop, and there is an absolute avenue to be able to archive your videos. So the question is that once upon a time, if you peer-reviewed books which were written, what prevents you from applying that same method to videos? I think that it's an interesting question. So I think that maybe let me answer it like this: that one aspect about the fourth industrial revolution is to not think in terms of a binary. Is it one? Is it this or that? The possibility is to be able to do this and that. Now, in the current mode, the Department of Higher Education and Training, now speaking specifically for South African authors, currently gives recognition to books, because that's the most traditional form of archiving and peer review that we know. Now, if you ask that in 10 or 20 or 30 years from now, the groups, will they be seeing that mode as the only mode? I think not. I think that these modes will develop, and I think that these modes will also develop because we as society are becoming a lot more inclusive. People that can write books are often people who may have the ability to have sight. And in this case, with a video or an audio, you may actually start becoming much more inclusive to people or persons who are differently abled. And so I think that these modes will evolve, and I think what we should do is be open-minded about it, and to play an active role as to play an active thought leadership role at a global level, where we can actually start to be the change that perhaps we wish to see, as one quotation goes. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Sinha. I really endorse your response, and I'm very excited by it, because I think there are amazing possibilities. Professor Mawala, I wonder if you have anything you'd like to add, otherwise we can move on to the next question.
No, I'm satisfied with the answer given.
Okay, good. The next question is, will the UJ Press publish fiction, poetry, motivational writing, self-help books and inspirational books? So Professor Mawala, I don't know if you would like to take that as a first step, and what had been some of your ideas around this?
Well, obviously, when we did this, we were thinking about a normal press that is similar to what you see in other universities. But I mean, motivational books and the rest, They normally fall into the popular press type of publications. So I would say that that will not be our identity.
Good. Thank you very much. The next question that's come up is, will the university make money available for open access publishing? Professor Sinha, perhaps you would like to take that question.
Yeah, I mean, I must say that, you know, the work that has happened here has actually happened through the library, in that, you know, we have got some, you know, budget for article processing charge. That's what it's called. And similarly, I think when we are going to be doing books, we'd have to have, you know, some avenue for sponsorship. But I think that we would have to, you know, also look at the avenues available by our sister institutions that will be making an input, a knowledge contribution, in that the output subsidy is, you know, it goes to where the authors are in the South African setup. And so we would always have to look at, you know, the alternative to that is to budget. You know, when somebody compiles a research proposal or a proposal for a creative output, is actually to budget a line item for the article processing charge if you are to avail that book on the open online platform. But if you're availing it on the online platform, the cost may be low, because we may have a secondary avenue, which would be a, you know, a pay you know, on demand avenue for cost recovery. But in the end, with whatever model that we are going to pursue, with sponsorship, external or internal seed granting, we would have to look at a return on investment. As otherwise, as you've seen with many bookshops, book publishers, apologies, you find that they do fade if it is not, the aspect of financial self-sustainability is not also an important goal for such an entity.
Thank you very much. And then I think this may be our last question. Somebody is asking, when you look at the big publishers, they make a lot of money from textbooks. Are we thinking of publishing textbooks? Professor Sinha, if you would like to start with that, and then perhaps we can move to Professor Mawala.
Yeah, I think that the Vice Chancellor has given a good perspective. You know, I don't see, you know, whatever that we do in our business, in our approach today, continues to evolve. And so I think, you know, the way I envision this in my mind is that there will be different phases. Our first phase will be the aspect of these peer-reviewed books, something that we are accustomed to. We know how this works. And I think that would be one phase. Now, side by side, what is emerging here, also in our own system in South Africa, is the aspect of creative outputs. And creative outputs perhaps creates the avenue for a second phase. I do think that there will be, at least in my view, and maybe Professor Marwala has some thoughts as well, is that the aspect of textbooks is something that we, you know, we as a university, we do want to contribute to knowledge contributions. But if you look at some of the books that we've had, I think Closing the Gap is one example that Prof. Marwala is in fact the author, which is now, I think, on the top 7 most selling texts in the country on exclusive books, gives an example where you do actually need alternative avenues to be able to provide thought leadership to the broader public. So the way I see it, and I'm a bit caught off guard here, is that I would see this, you know, aspect of book press evolving in phases, and these would be some of the phases. And I think that there may be a phase where we would look at and I think Oxford University Press, which started in South Africa, well, it started, of course, in Europe, but started its South African entity in 1915, exists today, partly because of its component of the textbook. So I think diversifying, like any other commercial entity in the long run, will be something that one needs to view. Now you have put me in a difficult spot, because you've asked the Vice Chancellor to comment after this, and and I fear that he may disagree.
Professor Mawala, perhaps you have some comments to make, and then I also have some comments to make from the perspective of the library.
No, I mean, look, I mean, I personally would not be against publishing textbooks or handbooks, as Professor Sina would call it. You know, I can quite see that could actually be an exciting aspect of it. And I suppose when I said, you know, we look at other places like Oxford University Press, they do publish textbooks, you know. So, so I think that those are some of the things that we'll consider.
Yes, so I personally, in my own discipline, we don't use a lot of textbooks, but I can see the value of textbooks. And over the years, particularly in my work in the library, I've come to see that actually, I think we often undervalue the scholarship of teaching and learning that is often embedded in a textbook. A really good textbook is almost the culmination of a lot of research in how to teach something and teaching something. And I think we should be starting a conversation about rethinking textbooks and why textbooks are not accredited. I can understand that they are not new knowledge in the way that a monograph is, but I do think that often in this particular context of the 21st century, where there is so much information out there, textbooks provide an interesting way of packaging information, thinking about what, for example, the French Revolution means, taking a stance and making an argument throughout the textbook. And then also the aspect of scholarship, of teaching and learning that is the bedrock of any good textbook. So I'm glad to hear Professor Sinha say that we can do this in phases, and perhaps this might be another one of those areas where we can provide some leadership and start a more robust conversation about the handbook and the textbook and its place in the world, particularly something that is interactive. That brings us to the end of our time. Thank you all very much for joining us, and a very warm thank you to Professor Tseletse Mawala, the Vice Chancellor of the University of Johannesburg and the Principal, to Professor Sarab Sinha, the Deputy Vice Chancellor of Research and Internationalization, and Ms. Nolwazi Mamarare, our Chief Financial Officer, for your input, and to everybody for participating and for the interesting questions and the dynamic questions, which have given us much to think about. Thank you all very much for your participation, and we look forward to the next installment in our journey of the UJ Press and how it grows at the University of Johannesburg, in South Africa, and worldwide. Everybody, I hope you have a very good afternoon and enjoy the rest of your week. And thank you for participating. Goodbye.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.